My name is Sarah Dexter. I am an admissions and recruitment specialist at the Brown School at Washington University in St. Louis. I am joined by two of our wonderful students, Sarah and Alexi, who I'll have them introduce themselves shortly. Again, we are having the session on tips for submitting your strongest application. So we're really going to dive into some nitty-gritty details on some tips and tricks that we suggest. There isn't any like magic serum or whatever to give you a strong application. That a lot of different things that you bring uniquely can really provide a strong application, and we're just going to get more in detail about that. So we have some questions that were submitted in advance. Thank you to folks who did that. And again, y'all are practicing the Q&A feature right now, so feel free to ask questions as they come up, and we will answer those at the end of the session. So we'll try to leave quite a bit of time towards the end for folks to ask questions. I'm just checking out our chats here. This is great. Thank you. Also, we will be sending along a contact form in a bit in the chat. So if y'all could complete that contact form so we can stay connected, we would love to do that. And I can link that in a moment. So, all right, I'm going to close down my chat boxes. And yeah, I would love for our panelists to introduce themselves. Sarah King, can we start with you?
I think you said Sarah King, so I'm going to just talk. Hi, I'm Sarah. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and my hometown is Los Angeles, California, but I went to undergrad in Connecticut. I went to Wesleyan University, a small liberal arts college. I'm a second-year MPH student, and I'm specializing in health policy analysis.
Everyone, I am Alexi Bolton. I use she, her pronouns as well, and I am a second-year MSW student concentrating in social and economic development and specializing in social entrepreneurship. I am originally from Huntsville, Alabama, and right now I'm doing the hybrid course, so I am in St. Louis today.
I realized I didn't say where I am. I'm also doing hybrid courses, so I'm in St. Louis as well.
Awesome, thank you both. Again, I'm so happy to see your faces and glad you were able to join this panel. So I think I mentioned my introduction at the very beginning, but just to be sure everyone's here, I'm Sarah Dexter. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an admissions and recruitment specialist within the Office of Admissions, and really excited to be here today. So we will go ahead and get started. So first, we want to just chat about application deadlines. So as I mentioned, this session is really going to be on your strongest applications. And so we recognize that this process can be really exciting for some. It can also be really stressful for others. And so we know there's a lot of pieces, a lot of factors that go into your graduate school search, and there's a lot of uncertainty right now. And so today we really just want to help provide some tangible tips for you to help navigate this this really distressing process at times. So to get started, again, we're just going to go through our deadlines first. Our applications went live this week officially. So our priority consideration deadline is December 15th. And so, so what that means is that for folks who submit their application in its entirety by December 15th, will receive an admission decision by February 1st. For all folks, we do ask that they provide their enrollment decision by May 1st, and you'll see that in this next item. Regular decision is any decision or is any application that is submitted after December 15th, but before March 1. So March 1 is really the regular decision deadline. And so if you submit after that December 15th, but before March 1, you can expect to receive a decision 6 to 8 weeks after submitting your application. And again, we do ask for your response by May 1st. It is important to note for the priority consideration that that doesn't necessarily mean you're locked in. All that means is that you are given priority consideration, that you have full range of admission and scholarship opportunities at that time. It's not necessarily a binding agreement, it's truly just priority consideration. So that's the big distinction between priority and regular. After that, we do accept on a rolling basis. And so after March 1st, we aim to review applications again 6 to 8 weeks after submitting. And we do again ask for your enrollment decision by May 1st, and that is on a rolling admissions basis. So case by case as there is availability. That's for both admission and for scholarship. So here is a breakdown of all of our applications. You can see the comparison between them all. So we just want to give a really quick overview of all the application requirements. So you can see we have MSW, MPH, and MSP. We'll get into more information on each of these programs throughout the session here today, but this is again just a quick overview to compare the apps. So we do require a personal statement for all 3 programs. We do require an analytical essay just for the MSW program. We'll get into that. Reference letters for all 3, a comprehensive resume. You'll see here, standardized tests are all X'd out. That means we are not requiring any standardized tests. Our MPH program previously required the GRE. We are no longer requiring or even accepting the GRE. We recognize some folks may want to submit standardized tests because they've already completed them. I hear you. However, we will not be accepting those because we don't want to create any sort of unfairness or bias towards folks who are not submitting those, because this is not something a part of our application process any longer. So again, no standardized tests. We do require transcripts for all 3 programs, as well as a scholarship interview if you are interested, international English language proficiency demonstrated, an application fee for all 3. And then for the MPH program, we do have a human biology prerequisite. That doesn't mean if you don't have that now, you can't apply. It just comes into play if you are admitted and choose to enroll. Then we will need you to complete a human biology prerequisite. If you have questions around that, we'd be happy to chat more. There's a lot more information on the human biology prerequisite on our website as well, where it lists out different course options, giving examples of that. So for international applicants, as I mentioned, we do require an English language proficiency requirement. So if your transcripts are not in English, you will need to provide a certified English translation of those transcripts. And so we have a couple of accrediting bodies here. MPH applicants will be asked to provide a WES evaluation. And so if you go through the SOFA's application, it should guide you through that process. For the, so that was for transcripts, but for demonstrating your language proficiency, we do accept a number of tests. So you can see here, TOEFL, IELTS are preferred, but we recognize it's really hard for folks to potentially go into testing centers right now. And so for now, we are accepting additional testing options. So you'll see we're accepting TOEFL ITP Plus for China, TOEFL IBT Home Edition, and Duolingo. They have a web-based testing application, and you can complete that as well. If you do complete any of these other options, there is a contingency that you will need to complete additional English testing upon arrival. And again, if you have any questions about these requirements, we know it can get a little sticky. We'd be happy to talk to y'all individually or at the end of the session. So it's a very quick overview of some of those additional requirements for our wonderful international students. So next, we want to talk a little bit about our dual degrees and our joint degrees. So some folks often ask, because our programs, if they're in the same school, do they need to complete separate applications? Yes, you will apply to both programs separately. The application process is separate across MSW, MPH, MSP. They're all separate programs. The scholarship awards and funding is also separate. So we'll get more into the scholarship component in a bit, but for each program you apply to separately, there's also different funding associated with that. So as I mentioned, you will apply to each program separately. You must be admitted to both programs. However, there's one interview for the merit-based scholarship, and that is a video interview. If you're not sure if you want to apply to one or both, or perhaps all three, you can apply just to one right now. And then during your first year, you can apply to the dual degree option. Or if you are already a dual degree, during your second year, you can apply to that third option. So next, we're going to chat really briefly about the joint degrees. We offer a number of joint degree programs. If you attended the previous virtual info session with Sarah Birch around the Brown School, you may have noticed that she also mentioned our joint degrees. We have a lot of opportunities to build connections across other graduate schools within the Browns or within WashU, but then also with community partners as well. So here you can see a list of some of our joint degree offerings. I would recommend checking out our website to learn more about those specific details. You will also apply to both programs individually and be admitted individually. So say you're interested in the MSW MBA, those application processes are completely separate. Olin does their own review, we do our own review, and so you will need to apply separately. They will be reviewed by their own programs, and you will also be awarded and apply for a financial aid and scholarship completely separately as well. If you are applying to a joint degree program, we would like you to indicate that in your Brown School application, and then it'll also ask if kind of where you're at in that phase. So are you applying? Have you already been admitted? That sort of thing. All right, so now I want to chat a little bit about our holistic review process. So this is a term that I think gets thrown around quite a bit, but folks don't always know what it means. And so we want to be very clear on what we mean at the Brown School by a holistic review process. So for us, that means that we really look at each applicant as an individual, and we carefully consider every part of their application in a really comprehensive way and balancing all of those components. So this means that while we do consider your GPA and academic coursework, we also look very, very closely at your essays, your letters of recommendation, and overall professional experience. So some folks might be concerned about one specific area. We hear that and recognize that, but totally understand we'll be looking at these other components as well. So some questions that may be helpful for you to think about and that we look for within your application. Are you addressing what is motivating you or pulling you towards your degree programs of choice? Are you passionate about addressing racial, social, economic, and health disparities and inequities? Are you willing to challenge and also be challenged, having an open mind, coming with a sense of curiosity and willingness to learn? How do you approach teamwork and collaboration? There's a lot of team-based, group-based, collaborative work that goes on within all three of our programs. Are you able to articulate your values, even if you don't know exactly what professional role you'll apply them to? And then are you willing to learn and grow as a scholar, practitioner, and advocate? And so the holistic review process is really, really designed to build a community of individuals whose unique set of personal experiences, leadership roles, professional goals will flourish within and enhance our own community of advocates, activist leaders that are guided by a social mission. So there isn't one type of Brown School applicant or student, you'll see that we have a really diverse cohort of students within the Brown School. And we find that to be an incredible strength that our Brown School community has. So Sarah and Alexi, I would love to hear a little bit from you all, or could you comment on how the holistic approach has shaped your experience in the classroom and how maybe you've seen that show up?
We'll get into a rhythm here, but happily. So I think the holistic review process is one of my favorite things that you all as the admissions review committee do. And in my experience at the Brown School, it's produced such a diverse and valuable cohort. And you can see it in little things like the fact that I came straight from undergrad to grad school, and some of my best friends have been working in the field or in completely different fields for 10 years. And I think we learn a lot from each other. I get to learn from their experiences. They bring a lot of wisdom and a lot of different sort of perspectives to the table that I really appreciate. And whether it's academic strictly or from their time in the field, I think those experiences are what make some of our classroom discussions and even our out of class discussions so rich and so educational for me.
I definitely agree, especially on the MPH side. We have a lot of people who they were either like a doctor before they got to the Brown School, or they're like me, and I only worked for about a year before I came to school. So we all have, some were working in school settings, some were clinical, some were in completely different fields working in like laboratory research, or they were a history major and they just are really passionate about what they want to study here at the Brown School. And so we all have these like reasons and these stories for coming to this particular place with this particular setting. Sorry, my cat. With this particular setting. But the one thing that we all have in common is that we all want to advance either public health or social work or social policy. And so having that kind of unique theme with a resounding similarity really makes for a really impactful conversation.
That's great. Thank you both for sharing about that, and just echoing from my experience and on the other side. It's really cool to see just the variety of folks who choose to apply to the program and end up enrolling. And it's fascinating to see where folks come from, and then seeing how that plays out in the classroom, and just how folks are able to learn from each other just because of lived experience. I know I've learned a lot just from conversations with other current students, and that's been such a joy for me to have as well. So thank you. So now we're going to move into a little more specifics around the application. I'm sure folks are really looking for like some tangible items to address. So here we're going to talk about letters of recommendation. We actually got a number of questions pre-submitted around this, so I hope this section will be helpful for folks. So each of the programs, we do ask people to submit 3 letters of recommendation. If possible, we do ask for academic and professional, and the third could be one of those. We really want you to ask people who you like and who like you. That might seem super intuitive, but we want these letters to be personal and to be authentic. And as someone who reviews applications, you can see when someone's like, oh yeah, Sarah King needs to go here. She deserves this. Alexi is legit. Here are all the awesome things that she's done. We can see that and we can feel that in letters. And so we want you to ask people who like you, because that will play out in the letter. We also want folks who can speak to your capacity in academics, your curiosity, your rigor, your leadership and collaborative skills, and your commitment to the field, your experiences. It's often helpful if your recommender has known you for a bit, so typically a year or longer. They tend to have more experiences to draw from and just have a wealth of information to articulate within your letter. Also, you can coach your recommenders. And by that, I mean, you can provide them your resume, you can provide them a personal statement, you can give them information, have a conversation with them about what it is you like about these fields and why you want to pursue that, what it is about the Brown School that you're super jazzed about. That was something personally I didn't know when I was applying to grad school, is that you could really talk to your recommenders about it. And of course, they're the ones writing it. So they have to, you know, feel great about what they're saying. And that's not your job to have them say one thing or the other, but you can provide them the information to then help them write a strong letter. So that's just like a tip that I like to tell folks, because I had no idea that was something that you could do, which is very silly of me. And so some people have asked about recommendation letters specifically, like if you've worked in the field for a number of years and you don't have any connections to potentially your previous institution, do you still need an academic reference letter? No, you totally don't need to. If you have all professional experiences and you have good connections with folks professionally and you want your letters to come from them, that's totally fair. You can have 3 professional recommenders. Similarly, some folks may have more academic focused recommenders. That's totally fair too. Maybe you are coming straight from undergrad and you're asking a practicum advisor, a academic advisor, and a faculty member or a research advisor. You can certainly do that too. We look at the letters very, very closely, and we try again to take a really holistic approach, recognizing where you're at in your professional career and what sort of opportunities you've had. So those are the letters. Sarah and or Alexi, do you want to chat a bit about how you went about finding your recommenders or how that process was for you?
So I can go first this time. So I mentioned earlier that I only had a year out of undergrad before I was applying to the Brown School. So I didn't really feel like the job that I was working before I got here was really a good choice, because I'd only been there for like 4 months and I was already applying. So I reached out to 2 of my research professors at my undergrad, and they were more than happy to write my letters of recommendation. As Sarah mentioned, they asked for my personal statement, my resume, my CV, and how my interests from undergrad have kind of shifted due to the new work that I was doing and why Brown School was a good choice. And so they were more than happy. And then I had a third professional recommendation from someone that I had worked with for a number of years, just over summers doing teaching work. And he was also interested about why I was no longer doing teaching and why I was interested in public health. And so these conversations definitely help shape the letters. I assume anyway, I've never actually seen them, but, and so they help kind of shape my ideas going forward about how to apply and how they kind of perceive me as a student and as a public health professional.
Yeah, I think those are great tips. I used 3 academic letters. One of them was a practicum supervisor, and one of them was a professor I had for class, and the third was just a faculty member who I had built a really good relationship and rapport with. And I think my tip is less practical. I know we were trying for practical tips, sorry, but more in believe in the people you know. And I think sometimes it's really scary to make that initial contact. At least I always felt like it was, like, not that I thought they were going to say no, but I didn't want to be an imposition. And I think at the end of the day, so many people in our lives really want us to succeed. So just reach out to those people. And even if they don't have time right then, they may be able to help you think of someone else who may be a better fit than they are. I usually sent an email. If I couldn't find the faculty member in person, I would send an email that was like, "Hi, Dr. Traylor. Hope you're well. You know, if you have time, I'm applying to the Brown School. I was hoping that you could write a letter speaking to what you have seen of me in classroom settings and how you've seen me excel academically over the last 4 years." So something with very specific what I wanted them to speak to. I always included that in my email, as well as my CV and other statements like Sarah said.
That's great. Thank you both for sharing a little bit about your processes. And it, like, I think that was a beautiful example of how like Sarah and Alexi had two different like not approaches, but they asked different folks, and it obviously worked out for them. And I appreciated the context that you mentioned, Alexi, in the email of giving them that kind of explicit directions of what you were hoping for. As someone who has written recommendation letters, that is really helpful for the person if you have a prompt. Like, I think we all like some sort of guidance. So I like that, that tip as well. So next, speaking of prompts, we're going to chat about the personal statement. So for each application, they all require a personal statement. And so we ask you to provide a statement that really describes your interest in the field that you're pursuing. Your essay should be 2 pages, single-spaced, and should include the following. So significant factors that influenced your decision, relevant leadership experience, career goals and your commitment to social change, and then essentially why the Brown School is a good fit for your educational and professional goals. And so here I'm going to talk a little bit more about like our tips and things to consider. It may sound silly, but like follow the prompt. That's one of my biggest tips for this section. It might seem very straightforward, but my recommendation is if you're unsure, if you're feeling stuck, go back to the prompt. After you write it and you reread it, go back to the prompt and make sure you're checking off those little things because it's only 2 pages and it's really easy to kind of stray from that if it's not really focused. And that is what we're looking for in the review committee. You can answer this prompt in a number of different ways, but we are really using that prompt to guide our understanding of your personal statement. So this is really an opportunity for you to share your story, to let us know why you're applying, what are you excited about, why are you passionate about this field, why is the Brown School the best fit for you, why do you like us? There's so many programs that are also good. I mean, we think we're the best, but why do you think we're the best for you? We want to know that because we want to know that you've put some thought and effort into this because we're putting a lot of thought into who we're admitting as well. And so we also want to know how you're going to contribute. You're going to get, if you're admitted and choose to enroll, you're going to get a lot of awesome opportunities here, but how are you going to contribute too? This is a very collaborative environment. This is grad school, so you have a lot of opportunities to engage. So how do you want to engage? Are there certain student groups you're interested in? Are there research centers that you're really jazzed about the sort of work that you're doing? Maybe it's about the St. Louis community as well. That's a little expanded from the Brown School, but we're also really a big part of St. Louis, and St. Louis is a big part of us. So that's something that you can note as well. And then after you graduate, what are your career goals? How are you going to really make an impact in your specific field? These are all some different things to ask yourself, and ultimately focusing on like the why. Why are you doing this? Why are you excited? Why the Brown School? And what do you want to do moving forward? I think like asking that why and digging down can be really helpful. So I want to open it back up to Alexi and Sarah. Do y'all have any tips or recommendations for the personal statements?
I can go. I pulled up my personal statement to answer this question, and I came back with no wisdom. But I saw something in the chat that I want to touch on about having maybe a different undergraduate degree or an unrelated undergraduate degree. And for me, I did part of my undergraduate program in marketing, so completely unrelated, but I definitely talked in my personal statement for about 2 paragraphs about how my experiences in marketing and in PR shaped my interest in the Brown School and why that drove me towards social work. So going back to that why and wrapping in your whole story, whether it's something completely different from social work, or you did a BSW, or you did something that was directly related, I think telling that whole story gives the application committee just a picture of who you are and what you want to do and why you want to come to the Brown School. And I think that's such a valuable part of the story well. So definitely don't shy away from sharing that whole background in your personal statement. I think that's great. And proofread.
Wow, that was definitely a great answer. I don't even know if there's anything I can really add. The only thing, like I've always been told that the personal statement is really your story, and the Brown School in our application process, we're really just looking for this kind of cohesive story about like who you are, how you got here, what was your journey. And so the main thing I focused on when I was writing my personal statement was it wasn't the reason why I first got interested in public health, but it was an anecdote from my past about what kept me going and what kept the interest kind of alive. And so I was talking to someone who used to work in admissions, and he was telling me about how important it is that it feels authentic and that you're just really trying to help people understand what your passion is and why you're passionate about it.
Can I add something? The other tip someone gave me that I think is a great tip and maybe sort of intuitive is to read your personal statement out loud to someone who knows you well. So read it to your mom, your best friend, somebody who wrote your recommendation letter, and say, does this sound like me? Like, if you read this, would you think of me? Because that helps you drill down to authenticity and to the key pieces of your story. And also reading things out loud, I think, always makes us think through a little bit more what we're saying.
Yeah, those are all such great tips. And again, as someone who reviews these applications and personal statements, I just want to like hammer in what Alexi and Sarah said is, yeah, this is your time to shine and tell your story. There isn't one right story. There's hundreds and thousands of different stories and reasons people have come to the Brown School. And so whatever your reason is, that's good. That's great. Share that. We're not, and I know I said earlier, like follow the prompt, but there's so many ways that you can address that. So, so yes, I think Alexi and Sarah said it so well, but this is your time to shine and let us know why you're a good fit. So next we're going to chat about the analytical essay. So this is just for the MSW application. And to note for dual degree students, again, you will have two separate applications. So if you're doing MSW and PH, then you will have two completely separate applications. Your essays could also look different as well. My suggestion for I know I'm switching back a little bit, but for the personal statements, because they're separate, the MSW and the MPH, they can be tailored a bit to each program. They don't necessarily, they shouldn't necessarily be identical because you are applying to two different programs. There can be a lot of overlap and a lot of similarity, and the content can be essentially the same, but also tailoring it to each program because admission is based individually on each program. So that's just a note because I think I saw something in the chat around a dual degree applicant. There's something to say about. Okay, so hopping back to the analytical essay. So this is again just for MSW students. And the prompt here is we're really asking folks to focus on a social issue of concern to you, something you're interested in, something you're passionate about. It should be 2 pages, single spaced, and include references on a 3rd page if needed. And so here we ask you to really describe that issue and the key factors contributing to it, the solution or solutions to that issue, and steps for implementation. How are you going to implement the solution, challenges to that solution, and then again, citing the sources. So for me, I'm kind of a visual person. I think of it as like a funnel. So like you want the factors up here, and then you're getting a little more narrow into a solution. You don't have to solve the entire problem, but just like a solution, a approach. You probably can't solve this issue in 2 pages, and you're also one person. So just a solution on how you're going to address this, and then how you're actually going to implement that. That's a piece a lot of people kind of forget. Like, here's my solution, but they don't get into the details on how they're going to carry that out. And then the challenges to that solution. So folks, if in like a research paper, you often see like these sort of headings, and it's laid out in a similar way. That could be an example of how you choose to write this paper. It's not a research paper. It does not have to be one. But if you're someone who likes examples, that is one example that comes to mind for me. Again, as long as you're laying out these like 3 explicit areas, then you're good to go. We don't have a preference on formatting. If you like headings, great. You just want to use paragraphs, fantastic. The big thing here is we want your work cited, but whatever citation preference you have, that's fine as well. We're not coming through the red pen and marking up, did you use quotations correctly? That's not what we're doing. We just want to know, which I'll pull up this next piece, that you can think critically, that you can analyze issues and come to some sort of solution and propose actionable items to address that. We want you to address the entire prompt, as I mentioned. Please cite all sources that you use. And another tip, which I kind of mentioned on like the funnel, is focus down on a specific topic, group of people, demographic, location. If you're someone who is interested in mental health, you can't write a 2-page paper on the topic of mental health. I mean, you can. It's very hard, I should say. Very hard. Where do you start? But it may be helpful to narrow that down. So maybe you want to talk about the importance of mental health education in adolescence, or the importance of mental health education in rural communities, whatever that is. But I think focusing in on it will help guide your paper a bit. Alexi, I want to pass it over to you and ask if you have any tips for the analytical essay.
I don't really have a ton of additional tips. I really do think you're spot on in saying to narrow down. It would be amazing if we could end childhood poverty in 2 pages, but probably not super feasible. I think for me, what made it easier is to pick something that I was already pretty knowledgeable about and pretty passionate about. So I chose a topic that was something I'd been working on for 5 or 6 years, and gathered a lot of research I'd used for other projects. And it was definitely a through line, included some of it in my personal statement, and then really got to focus on it in that analytical essay. So an additional space just to share something you're passionate about. And I always think work that I'm passionate about turns out better. So that's a tip from my experience.
That's great. Thank you, Alexi. I'm just going to keep moving because I realize we still need time for question and answer. So I'm just keep bopping along. So the next piece we're going to chat about is official transcripts. And so when you're applying to the MSW and MSP, we do not require official transcripts. You may upload unofficial transcripts directly to the application. We do ask if you've taken 6 or more credits at an institution that you provide that unofficial transcript. So often students have their student portals where they can take like a screen grab or like a PDF of their unofficial transcripts. That's great. Again, we just ask for those to be in English, so we can read those and locate like your GPA and the courses that you've taken. Once you are admitted and enrolled, that's when we'll ask for your official transcript. So you don't need to request an official transcript for the MSW and MPH application, or sorry, for the MSW MSP application until you're enrolled. However, for the MPH, when you're applying to SOFAs, you are required to submit an official transcript directly to SOFAs. There isn't an option to submit unofficial. If you are admitted and enrolled and your degree was in progress, so if you are currently currently obtaining your bachelor's degree when you apply, you will need to submit an official transcript confirming that you have completed your degree and it's confirmed. For those who have already graduated, you have your official transcripts already through SOFAs. So that's the difference there. Again, these official transcripts have to come directly from your graduate and undergraduate institution. they can't be submitted by the student. All right. So next we're going to chat about the resume and CV. So folks ask me about this quite a bit. Is there a page limit? No. We want all of your experiences. So post high school, I should say, if there are experiences that you're not sure about, but you think they're still relevant, add them. Please go ahead. Again, we're doing a holistic review process. So we're really looking at your entire application, your entire experience, history, and taking those things into account. So that includes volunteer experience, leadership experience, research, paid, professional. We really look at all of the pieces that you include. If maybe you're someone who comes from a non-traditional background, or maybe you don't have like public health and social work experience, that's okay. Add your experience working in IT for 5 years. That is relevant. If you've worked in education, or I mean, whatever field it is, go ahead and add it. We think those are relevant experiences, and it gives us a better understanding of who you are and what unique experiences you have and will bring to the Brown School. One of my good friends is a current student. I only think I have a little bit of, I think I only influenced her a little bit to come, but she has a marketing background, and she worked in the field of marketing for a number of years. And our application review committee still certainly took that into consideration when reviewing. So please add whatever you think is relevant. Don't limit it to one page. There's often times where I review applications and the resume is one page, but then they talk about something in their personal statement that they did that wasn't reflected in the resume. I'm like, oh, you volunteered with this organization for 2 years, but you didn't note that. Please be sure to note that, because we want to know what's up. Sarah, Alexi, do y'all have any recommendations or tips for the resume?
I kind of just want to highlight what you said about, no page limit. I submitted my CV when I was applying, and it wasn't a long CV because I didn't have a long career, but and it wasn't really public health related either. It was all about like the natural sciences research I had done, but I feel like it does more than show why you're interested in public health, but it shows more about like the jobs you've held, what kind of things you can do, and more about just who you are and how you got here. And so don't like stress too much about how to format it, how long it is, or what's on it. Just make sure it shows an accurate picture of yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You're just really highlighting like your experiences thus far, and it helps give us a better, more comprehensive understanding of where you've been and kind of where you want to go. That's great. All right, so lastly, we want to chat really quickly about the merit-based scholarship interview process. So on the application, if you're interested in receiving merit-based scholarship, you will indicate within the application. Once you submit your application, you'll receive an invitation to complete a video interview. It's important to note that requesting merit aid does not impact admissibility. So if you are interested in receiving aid, please indicate that in your application. Every student requesting merit-based scholarship and that completes the interview does receive some form of merit-based scholarship. So if you're interested, check that box, complete the interview, and you will receive some form of scholarship. I can't emphasize that enough. For our MSW, MPH, and MSP dual students, you will have 5 questions. And if you are MSW, MPH dual, you will have 6. There are no wrong answers or technically right answers. It's really just an opportunity for us to get to know you in a more comprehensive way, for you to share your story, for you to talk about your experience from yourself and not have to even go through like an essay. We really get to know you and hear you and see you. And it's honestly one of my favorite bits of the application review process, because it feels so much more personal. So if you have more questions around that, we'd be happy to answer. All right, so I have a feeling we have a number of questions. I've been seeing my chat box light up, but very quickly, we had a couple that were asked pre-session. And so I want to address those. I'm pulling them up over here. Okay, so a lot of these were around the recommendation letters. And so someone asked, can we have volunteer managers, supervisors, or academic major advisors write letters? Yes, you can. Our view of recommenders is pretty wide. So someone who, again, can speak to your experience, has seen you in some sort of supervisory, mentoring, advisor role, those are great. For applicants who graduated over 5 years ago, how many academic recommendations must we submit? You don't have to submit any academic recommendations again. They can be all professional if that is the pool of recommenders that makes sense for you. Should all professional recommendations be submitted by supervisors, or can a colleague we worked with in a non-supervisory capacity be a reference? So this kind of, there's not a clear-cut answer for this one. So yes, you can have a colleague certainly submit a recommendation letter. There are instances where you may not have a legitimate supervisor, especially if you're a director. There may not be someone who's technically over you. And so of course, a colleague is great. There may also be instances where you don't feel comfortable asking your supervisor for a number of reasons. So in that case, certainly a colleague may also be relevant. My recommendation is, though, not to have 3 colleagues if you can. Having someone who has overseen your work in some capacity, whether that's paid or volunteer, I think that's really, really helpful in what we sort of look for. Okay, I think we got all of the pre-questions submitted. So now I'm gonna pop over to the chat. Okay, so we'll try to move through these. So we'll start with Katie's. The priority deadline is December 15th, but the website says you guys will start reviewing applications November 15th. Will applications submitted on November 15th have any kind of advantage, or is the December 15th date the only one that matters in this case? Great question. So it's really the December 15th date that matters. We may start, as the website says, we may start reviewing applications before that deadline to ensure we're getting folks' responses in a very timely manner. But I would focus on the December 15th deadline. The November 15th is more just like an internal sort of deadline we'll be working from. Okay. For an academic recommendation letter, would a letter from a course taught by a graduate student be evaluated? Would it be considered any less legitimate than a typical professor? Good question. So in this case, it seems like that'd be like a TA. It may be that you and that instructor worked very closely together and you saw them multiple times a week for a semester, 2 semesters. If, again, this person saw you in some sort of teaching academic capacity, that will not be considered any less legitimate than a typical professor. Okay, so this next one asks about the 3rd recommendation letter, whether that should be academic or professional. As I mentioned, it could be either, just depending on what you think is going to be the strongest letter and have the strongest recommender. So it can be all academic, all professional, or a mixture of the 3. Again, it's folks who know you well and can really speak to your strengths. Okay, I'm realizing now I can say that I've answered questions. So this is new for me. So I'm clicking some of these. Okay, will recommenders be notified after we submit our application or before? Must they be submitted before the December 15th deadline for our application to be considered for a priority deadline? That's a great question. We get that a lot. So for your application to be considered complete, like fully complete, that includes your recommendation letters coming through. So we do encourage folks to have all of their materials submitted beforehand, if they can, before that December 15th deadline, and give your recommenders plenty of time to write their letters before that December 15th. So that may mean start reaching out to them now, giving them a deadline of, say, December 1st. So then if that doesn't come through by December 1st, there's some additional buffer to provide reminders or to give them a bit of grace period to get their letters in. Again, we will not review your application until all pieces are submitted, and that does include your recommendation letters. So ask early, and you can always remind folks kindly. So I would like to know if you need to, speak to what chosen concentration you're leaning towards in the statement or personal essay. Great question. So if you have a strong indication of what concentration you're really interested in, yes, talk to that. I would say most people do mention the concentration. So if that's children, youth, and families for MSW, if that's global health for public health, be sure to include that. You can also say if you're choosing between a couple areas or even just the area of interest. I think that hits on that as well. So if you can speak to the concentration or specialization, I would encourage you to do so. But even if it's just here are the different things I'm interested in, I'm still trying to decide, that's okay too. Does the review committee view a personal adversary described in the essay as a barrier to student success in the school? Oh, that's a good hard question. So as I mentioned, we review applications very closely, and for some students, part of their personal statement and their story is some sort of barrier they had to overcome. And so for us, I think we certainly don't look like that. We don't look at that as a barrier. We look at that as you being open to sharing your story and how you've managed that and how you are moving through that. We are also a school of social work, public health, and social policy. And so folks come from a variety of backgrounds with a lot of difficult lived experience, a lot of traumas, a lot of things that maybe spurred them into this field that didn't come from great places, but are propelling us towards making a positive impact. So if that's something that you feel you want to share and as a part of your story, please share that and know that we really respect you using that space to share part of your story. There's also a spot in the application where you can talk about any circumstances that may have impacted your academic career or other things we need to take into consideration. You can put that there too. And we do look at those very, very closely. And that is, again, a part of our really holistic approach to the application process. So Crystal asks, are there folks who can take a look at our essays with the understanding that we should reach out to mentors, friends, faculty, et cetera, to get feedback if possible? So I'll say our staff we don't really provide comments on essays, but what we can do is we can have a conversation. So if you feel like you're struggling or you want to make sure you're on the right path, we can certainly have a conversation around it, and we can chat with you about some of our tips. But on our end, we don't provide any like editing or feedback. I think using your support systems, friends, mentors, that sort of thing is great. We're also we look at grammar and professional writing, but we're also, again, not like red penning things. So it's really about following the prompt, sharing your story and your passions there. Perfect timing. How formal of a writing style should we use for a personal statement? So again, I would say professional writing. So if you've written something in a professional setting, in a school setting, I think that's the sort of style. Folks, you can certainly see of different styles across writing from applicant to applicant, but we do ask for a professional sense. You can use I. It is from your perspective, but we do ask for it to be polished, to use professional language, but we're not expecting it to be like a published work, that sort of thing. So for the analytical essay, is the solution you provide specific to you, such as how you will solve it in your future, or generally how social systems and government could solve it? It's a great question. So it could be how you would solve it. It could also be just a broader approach on how social systems, how government, how different programs or agencies could address it. It doesn't have to be you as the individual solving this large societal issue. It can be from a broader perspective as well. Okay. Oh golly, there's so many questions. Just as a note, these are so good, but if we don't get to your questions, please, you can follow up with us through brownadmissions@wustl.edu, our email. And then if you submitted that contact form with your email and information, that notes that you attended this session, and we will be sending out an email later, and that can be another touch point to answer these incredible questions. I'm so impressed. Okay, so if you're applying to an international concentration, would it be a bad idea to write your analytical essay about a domestic issue? Not at all. We don't necessarily hone in on which concentration you're looking at for your essays. We recognize our students have a variety of interests. So even if you're applying to international social economic development, but your analytical essay is about a domestic issue, that's great. I would say write about what you're interested in, what you're comfortable writing about, and you should be good from there. Can you send in a federal resume? That is a great question, and I would say yes. And I would like to maybe talk more about that one-on-one to better understand what you mean by that. So there's that. Okay, we have some more questions around merit-based scholarship and funding. These are fantastic. Overall, I would say if you have detailed questions around funding and merit-based opportunities, again, please reach out to us. We would be happy to provide more information on that. I can let you know when we review your application, that is also when we review for merit-based scholarship consideration at that same time. So when you are awarded your admission decision, and if you're admitted, you will also receive your merit-based scholarship consideration. So unfortunately, I tried to fly through those as quickly as I could. We're just about out of time, but these are such good questions, and I love how engaged folks were. This was truly such a pleasure on my end. I'm gonna just give a couple next steps for y'all to be aware of. So as I mentioned, our applications are open. There's that December 15th priority consideration deadline, and then March 1. You can find our application links here. And then we have a couple of upcoming events that might be of interest to you. So next Friday, a week from tomorrow, we have Fall Preview Day. And so this is a really awesome opportunity to get connected, to ask more questions, to learn about our programs in even more depth. Talk to current students. There will be a current student panel where you can ask more questions, and that will be purely question-based. There will not be a formal PowerPoint. And then there's also breakout sessions for you to attend on financial services, and then for our local WashU undergrads, there's an option for that as well. And then our next virtual info session is in November 12th, and that is for, that's on the topic of international student experience with Lynn Wynn. She will chat more about that next month. So if you have any questions, you can certainly reach out to me here at sdexter@wustl.edu. As I mentioned, you can connect to us on our Brown admissions at wustl.edu email account. And we really hope that you'll stay in touch. No question is too little or too silly. We really do want to stay connected and help you submit the strongest application that you can. That's my one last bit, is if you're getting concerned about those deadlines and if it would be better for you to have another week or 2 weeks to submit a stronger application with a revised personal statement, with a recommendation letter from that recommender you really want, take that extra time. We would rather you have a stronger application than one submitted by a specific deadline, because we can see the difference in that. So that was my one last tip before we head off. So thank you, Sarah and Alexi, for joining us panelists, and thank you all for attending. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I hope you're all staying safe. Thank you so much.